Welcome back to our summer podcast series. For this last week's edition, we've got three new faces with us today, including my own. So we're going to start off with some introductions. My name's Samuel. I'm on staff with university as an intern at UNC Chapel Hill. That basically means that I've graduated and I'm now trying to be as much like Zane as I can. I'm a second generation Chinese American, half Cantonese, half mainland, if you're trying to get specific. Yeah, and I have with me Katherine and Sam. So if y'all want to just introduce yourselves with your year, your major, role in IV, and your ethnicity as well.
I'm Katherine. I am a rising junior and I'm a computer science major. I'm a small group leader and I'm a second generation Chinese American.
I'm Samuel. I'm a rising junior as well, majoring in statistics and computer science. I'm a current rising sophomore small group leader, and I am also second generation Chinese American, specifically from Hong Kong though. So Cantonese, yeah.
Good. In addition to being small group leaders, Sam and Katherine also work with me on planning and setting up and leading our AAM dinner conversation series. AAM stands for Asian American Ministries. And so for the past semester, we've been having dinners and conversations once a month to talk about the intersection of Asian American racial identity and faith. Yeah, Sam and Katherine, what's something that y'all have been watching on Netflix lately?
I rewatched Avatar for like the 5th time. It was very good. I also started watching White Collar, but that's on Hulu, so I don't know if that counts.
No, it doesn't.
Sorry.
I've been rewatching The Good Place with my younger sister, so would recommend. Not theologically accurate, but nevertheless a great show.
Yes, good. Avatar: The Last Airbender and The Good Place are two of my favorite shows, so this makes me happy. Y'all are cooler than I thought you were. Anyways, we want to hear a little bit about you. So how did y'all get plugged into university? What was the process of getting plugged in when you came in? What were some of the concerns you had? And what were some of the reasons that you decided that university was a good fit?
I can go first on this one. Freshman year Fall Fest, I remember just going to like the different campus ministry tables, went to the university one, did the name sign up and had a brief conversation with Zane. Zane was like, oh, my boss, or I basically told Zane my home church, which is Raleigh Chinese Christian Church, and he's like, oh, you must know my boss who's James Ho. James was like one of my Sunday school teachers when I was younger, so I had that connection. And then like first week of class, I got lunch with Zane. I guess like, yeah, cool guy, I guess. And then yeah, one difficulty I had first semester is that the freshman small group that I wanted to be a part of met Monday nights, which is when I had orchestra. So didn't go first semester, but once I dropped orchestra, second semester came around, I joined the freshman guys small group, and that was pretty cool.
I visited university a couple times my first year, but I didn't join until I was a sophomore. And I remember going to a couple NSO events, outreach events, and I met a lot of really great people. It was really awkward, honestly, just like talking to a lot of people, and I forgot everyone's name like immediately after I talked to them. But they were all really nice and like really seemed like they cared about me, even though they just met me. And I remember going to the first large group that Friday and being really excited about the vast amount of people that were there and learning a lot from Zane's message. And then we had a party afterwards, which was really fun. Even though I didn't know like anyone there, everyone was super welcoming and it felt like very familiar, even though I didn't know them. And yeah, a few weeks later, I also became a freshman small group leader, which was really cool. And I was really grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, the backstory on that, in case you haven't heard this from Zane in another podcast, is that we had been planning to start 2 freshman women's groups, and we had 4 leaders for that, but we ended up having around 60 to 80 freshman women sign up for small groups. And at that point, we would have had a small group of 30 people, which is not a small group at all. And so we decided to multiply and ask a couple of people to step in. We do have a more formalized leadership process for our planned scenarios as well. Yeah, cool. So just to name sort of what we're all thinking about, InterVarsity is a predominantly white space. UNC is a predominantly white space. So what has it been like for both of you coming into college and InterVarsity as Asian Americans and navigating sort of those cultural dynamics?
So for me, I didn't really think about it that much because I think I've been used to being in predominantly white spaces for most of my life. Um, but when I became a small group leader, I definitely thought about it a lot more because I knew that I was different and I was like very aware of that. Not that like anyone in InterVarsity made me feel like I was different or like alienated me in any way, but I just like internally like had the awareness that I was different and that I might not be able to relate to my girls the same way that a white leader would. Um, which and like internally I thought that like I couldn't lead them as well or serve them as well as if I was white, which isn't true. But it just like became a little bit of a burden on me. So like my challenge was more of like understanding how like me being different wasn't a fault, but like a gift that God had given me to like have a different perspective and to just serve in a different way. Yeah.
For me, I guess going into college, like didn't, yeah, similar to Catherine, I just didn't really think about what it meant to be Asian American. And quite frankly, in a lot of my high school experience, I was kind of running away from it, trying to ignore it and pretend it wasn't a part of me. I think that carried through pretty much for the entirety of my freshman year at UNC. Starting my second year, once I was leading small groups, my freshman co-leading my freshman small group. Once again, in like a predominantly white setting, I felt like I was trying to compromise and try to like make people feel comfortable with themselves and make them feel welcome. And I think that kind of came at the expense of maybe me expressing some of the values that I grew up with, whether that be like, oh, you gotta respect your elders, like, or respect your family. I wouldn't really bring that up too much in our initial conversations. So that was a big challenge of mine. And once Sam, you, and Zane started talking more about ethnic, racial identities earlier this year, I was like, yeah, this is something that God actually cares about. It's not something that I have to pretend doesn't exist in order to make other people feel more comfortable, because God cares about it. He made me uniquely Chinese, and he's given all of us a special identity, and that's not something that should be ignored. So still trying to figure out specifically what it means to be Asian American in a predominantly white space. Like, I have no idea what that actually looks like still, but I'm trying to be more aware of it.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think all of us would be lying if we said that we had it figured out. But yeah, I do appreciate just sharing about that. Katherine, did you have any comments or insights from your own personal journey of what it was like and took for you to move more towards recognizing your ethnic and racial identity?
Yeah, I grew up going to like Chinese churches. My dad is a pastor and a missionary, so I followed him around to all the churches. We like went to American churches. We also went to Chinese churches. So I think I was never used to talking about my race in either of those spaces because in most of the churches that I went to, like didn't come up. Like the American churches didn't want to make me feel different, and the Chinese churches we never talked about it. So I think like Sam kind of said, I was struggling with like understanding what it actually meant for me to be Chinese and like why that actually matters. And I think like understanding that God made us all different and he made us unique and like with these different characteristics and backgrounds for a purpose and like so that we can serve him differently, because if all of us were the same, it would be pretty boring. Yeah, so I know like I've struggled a lot with like trying to focus on like one part of your identity and like saying that that is more important than being a Christian, which is not at all what I'm trying to say either. That like Christian is like the first identity that we should like identify with, but it's not that we should ignore the rest of the identity that God gave us, and that like I am a woman, like that's important to God and he created me to be a woman for a reason, and I'm Chinese and that's important to God, so he created me to be Chinese for a reason too.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, so we're just going to jump in and talk a little bit more about AEM here. So part of how this space came about for us was that our region hosted a multi-ethnic conference in November for Black students, for Latinx students, for Asian American students, and Middle Eastern students. And Sam and Katherine both attended in the Asian American tracks. And in debriefing, we felt that that conference and that space had been unique as offering a faith space for Asian Americans to be unapologetically Asian American. And so we wanted to offer that type of space for Asian American students on campus at UNC. And so that's kind of how things were birthed. But since InterVarsity is student-led, run ministry, yeah, I want to hear from you both a little bit about how the vision for AEM developed and what exactly that kind of vision and purpose is.
Catherine, you want to go first?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, well, like I was saying, I think I really wanted to understand what the intersection between like my ethnicity and my faith would be. And I think theoretically, Chinese churches would be that intersection. But also, like I said, we never really talked about race. So yeah, I had a lot of questions on like what that meant, and just like exploring all of that. And I figured that most of my other friends that were also Asian American Christians had similar questions about like what it actually meant to be Asian American and Christian, and like why does that matter to God? Does God even say that it matters, and stuff like that. So I think I wanted to be able to talk to my friends about it and like not make it awkward, just because bringing up like unfamiliar things is always a little bit awkward. So I think we wanted to like create a space to like be safe to like ask those questions and like not have judgment and just like know that like we don't have the answers and like you're not alone and you're struggling, but like that's okay. Yeah, and also I knew like a lot of Asian Americans who were Christian, but like didn't know the rest of the Asian American Christians on campus. So like all of the ministries felt like pretty disjointed and like a little bit like they were competing with each other. So I think it was also good for me to like join the church that I was going to with InterVarsity and seeing like how we can like work together and like join with the other ministries on campus to like unite in like our commonality as Asian Americans. Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot to mention earlier that this space is not just for Asian Americans. We're involved with InterVarsity. We've got people in a bunch of campus ministries who also attend and participate and eat. And so, yeah, yeah, didn't mention that. But Sam, did you have thoughts and comments on this question?
Yeah. You alluded to like the multi-ethnic conference in November, and yeah, to be completely transparent, like I kind of signed up for it out of obligation. I was like, gotta have some representation. I feel like Sam thinks that it'd be a good idea for me to go, so I'll go. I went in with an open mind, I guess, but I wasn't really sure what to expect or what would come of it. And I think yeah, like Catherine said, I think a lot of what I learned from that conference is, um, my Asian identity is very important to God, and yeah, I think before it was either like, oh man, I either identify myself as like Christian or Asian, which is straight up like not how it works. Uh, yeah, so I think the vision for AAM kind of developed for me like after that conference. I was kind of struggling. Like, I care about school, but it's to me like it's not my utmost priority, which might be contrary to a lot of Asian Americans at UNC or in general, with this huge emphasis on education. I kind of wanted to take a space there to use the space there to talk about how school is important and stuff, but at some point it becomes an idol, especially for um, Asian students. So that was kind of like one of the big points for me. Another thing was talking about family and how do we respect our family um, without like completely acquiescing to their to their requests or what they say. Like, how do you stand up respectfully to your parents or to your grandparents with ideologies that they didn't grow up on that they might not agree with. So that's kind of like those type of topics that I feel like are very important that I haven't explored in the past, but also growing to learn about them. Like, I thought would be important for other students to talk about as well.
Yeah, I think what Sam is really kind of getting to is that sometimes like we like to think of ourselves as blank slates coming into faith, and just that like we're kind of like neutral beings in following Jesus. But if Jesus requires us to follow him with our entire lives, that includes all of the things that like our ethnicity touches. So the ways that we think about family and education, the ways that we view gender roles, the ways that we view success and and comfort in the future, like all of those things the gospel touches, and also our ethnicity and our families and our cultures touch as well. And so that's part of what we want to do, is to make a space for Asian Americans to kind of delve deeper into those topics. Well, as you all know, a lot is happening in the world and on campus around race. So specifically, just to name a few things, the rise of anti-Asian racism with COVID-19, the rise of the resurgence, I guess, of Black Lives Matter protests and awareness around police brutality, Silent Sam on campus, the Asian American Center campaign on campus, as well as the recent awareness given to sexual assault cases in Asian affinity Greek life. So given that like all of these things are happening kind of at the same time, what do you envision AAM's role being in this climate, and what is kind of your hope for this space?
I think I'm struggling with all of the things that are happening right now too. I'm part of the Chinese Undergraduate Student Association, and we've just been pressured, not pressured, but there's just been a lot of, I can't think of another word other than pressure, but pressure to like speak out against all of these things and like just take a stand. And I think a lot of people in the Asian American community have like a lot of questions because there's a lot of stuff going on, and none of us really know how to handle it, just because it's really a lot, and it feels like it keeps piling up on each other. So yeah, I think that that could be really good for us, especially as like Christians, as like we should be actively fighting against injustice. And all of these things are things that have been going on for a really long time that like we might have been ignoring before. And like now that they're at the forefront of our minds, like it's happening in our community, like right there, like these, the stuff that's happening with the sexual assault cases are happening like in the fraternities on campus. Like you can't ignore that they're happening right there. And there's injustice happening on campus that like we can't ignore as Christians. So I think it would be really helpful if we could just like talk about it. Because like as an Asian American, I don't like talking about hard things, and I think that's pretty common. So yeah, I think it's like really present and like really important for us to address it. I think it'll be really hard, just because like we don't have the answers, and I think there's a lot of stuff that we just have to plead God for to like come quickly and to help us, because there's no way we can get out of this on our own. But yeah, I think that God has been really speaking to me and like pushing all of these issues to my mind and saying that like you can't ignore this, like you have to talk about it, and here are the people you can talk to.
Yeah. I think AAM's role in everything that's been happening, like all the injustices, yeah, sure. Ideally, like first and foremost, prayer, right? I think that's something that as a group, well, we haven't done a great job of. It's been kind of tough coordinating, especially over this summer online and all that stuff. But I think, coming together and praying. I also personally, like I've been touched most by the Black Lives Matter movement, mainly because in high school I was pretty apathetic to this, and now I feel like, yeah, like Katherine said, God has been putting these things on my heart. And before I always saw it as a black and white issue. And even towards the start of the movement, like this year, I was thinking like, where do I fit in with this? What am like, all these people are talking about black and white, but like, what does it mean for Asian Americans? I'm like, yeah, that's not the point of any of this. They're just talking about like the systemic injustices, and also like you guys have encouraged me to reflect on how me as an Asian American have also been kind of like been racist, or how we have benefited from the foundations that Black people have set on this country for other minorities. Things that like I didn't ever think about before. The women or the African Americans like pushing so hard for this, right? So it's like that kind of stuff that I never thought about before, that I hope we can also discuss within AAM. Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, we've got room to grow in a lot of different areas. Yeah, so I want to hear more of those. What are your hopes for AAM, and where do you want to see the space grow and develop in the next couple of years?
I think one of my main hopes is, I guess, more campus unity. Like Katherine said, it feels like a lot of these campus ministries are pretty isolated or independent. And yeah, especially with being the minorities or a minority on campus, having other Asian Americans from different ministries talk about their experiences would be great. And, just backing each other up, sharing our experiences. Yeah, I think I'd hope for it to grow to more than just monthly dinners. Like those are great. I love the food. I love the discussions that we have there. But also I kind of want it to be like people who are actually aware of the things going on, of who we are. Yeah, just building a community that's not forced once a month, but just like any other friends, any other community.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Yeah, I really want to like be able to have a space where everyone's comfortable bringing whatever thoughts or struggles or questions that they have, and just asking them. I know that's going to take a lot of work and being comfortable with each other, but just like not letting ourselves like sit on our questions and like using that as an excuse not to do anything, but to like bring them to other people and just struggle together. Yeah, and I would really like to see a lot of unity and like bring in other people from other ministries to like help us plan events and just like know what's going on with the rest of campus.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Um, yeah, it sounds good. It sounds exciting. Um, I'm excited thinking about what AAM could be in reaching more than just second generation Chinese Americans, um, because Lord knows we have a lot of us already. Yeah, and so I think just thinking about the way that even when we think about the Asian American community at UNC, what we so often mean is Chinese and Korean American. Um, but wanting to grow and recognizing and leaning into the fact that God has also created Vietnamese Americans and Filipino Americans and Hmong American students, and He has created them beautifully as well. And so I would like to see us grow in uh, just broadening our networks and in learning to love the rest of our campus well. But that's just me. Um, yeah, great. So let's zoom out to the broader chapter as we kind of wrap this discussion up. So what are some ways that you're seeing or hoping that the chapter grows in making space for different people?
I've sorry, I've seen a lot of growth like within the chapter even before we left and before the vast amount of things happened in the last few months, with like people just being willing to ask questions and like have those hard conversations with each other, like within my own small group, like when the Black Lives Matter thing came up again, we talked about it, and that's not something that we would normally talk about. And I think I was really encouraged by that because my girls were really willing to talk about it, even though they weren't super comfortable with it and they were like pretty confused at times. But yeah, it was really nice to talk to them. And as small group leaders, we also did like a session on or series on race and ethnicity. And I think that was also really encouraging just to have like all of my friends talk about it and like know these things, and just like be aware that like race affects all of us, whether we know it or not. Um, so yeah, I think I would like hope for us to be able to continue to talk about race and just like not ignore it and not have only the non-white people talk about race, and just like fully understanding like why God made us the way he did, and using those traits and those personalities and everything as like gifts and ways to serve him better. Um, yeah, because each and every part that God made us is important, even if like we think we're like super normal and we have nothing special about us. Like God made us different for a reason. So yeah, I think like starting these things with AM and with Jeremiah's small group, and like I know we have a bunch of hopes for other things too. I think that's like a really great start, and like being able to encourage the diversity within like all of IB is going to take a lot of time, but I think we're getting there, and like helping everyone feel more comfortable with like being welcoming in the space and like welcoming others who might be different.
I think in the future, like the hope is that we won't need an AAM. I think that would be the best thing. Like we don't need a certain space to feel like to talk about these things, to feel safe. Like it's great that we have it right now, but the hope is that in the future we'll be able to have these conversations with anyone, despite their race or ethnicity. Um, and I think, yeah, for InterVarsity on campus at the AAM, the people that are involved and the people that come to our discussions, that we'll be able to not just talk about things within our space, but also bring it out to the broader campus. So one thing that I really enjoyed this past or earlier this year is that I went to Boston with a few of my friends in the Rising Junior small group, And we got dim sum, and that was super super fun. You know, like it's a thing that none of them have ever tried before, but something that I hold very close to my heart because chicken feet is really good. And they're like all they're willing to try these crazy things and kind of to learn more about my culture, things that I enjoyed that they would never even think about trying, such as eating chicken feet. Um, so kind of that sort of thing. Like I'd hope that we'd be able to facilitate more discussion amongst Asian Americans, but also with non-Asian Americans, and just continue having those conversations and continue growing with each other, and that'd be great.
Yeah, that's great. Good. Well, as sort of a last gift to our listeners, what's one piece of advice that you would give to an incoming student knowing what you do now?
I would say that college is hard, so you should study and not procrastinate, but college is a lot more than studying. So don't just study and definitely give yourself breaks when you need them. And like take time to be in fellowship with others and just like make new friends because that makes college a lot more worthwhile.
Yeah, don't study too much. I'm a proponent for that. Um, I would tell incoming students, incoming freshmen, to not be afraid of introspection. I think that's something huge that I learned this past year. And like my freshman year, I was so comfortable with who I was, and like that's a great thing. Be comfortable with yourself, be confident, but also at the same time that led to me being complacent about who I was. So being willing to take a step out to try to think about who are you really, um, what are different aspects of your identity that you might not have considered, like the exact question that I've been thinking about this past year. I think that's super challenging, but also super rewarding.
Yeah, that's great. I wish I had known that all those years back when I was entering school. Um, cool. Yeah, Sam, Katherine, thank you so much for your wisdom and advice and your stories and sharing that with us. For those of you who are listening and watching, we've come to the end of our series. This is either the last or the second to last video. And so all of our freshman small group leaders have been interviewed. And so if you want to go back on our channel and check those out, you can get a sense for who might end up being your leaders in the fall, just to help us actually feel like we're coming to campus and being a part of college. Yeah, we want to create a space where you can follow Jesus with all of who you are. And so, yeah, whether that's in your ethnicity or other aspects of your identity, we want to make space for you. And so, yeah, one of the first things that we teach our small group leaders is to submit to others' interests. And so if you're wondering if you'll fit in with InterVarsity, I am committing this group to helping you fit in and helping us fit around you. But yeah, if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on Instagram. We're at UNC_InterVarsity. Go ahead, like, comment, and subscribe for more content. Just kidding. You don't have to do that. But if you would like to get involved and have someone reach out to you even before the semester has started, feel free and shoot us a DM on Instagram. We'll get you connected. So yeah, thanks for tuning in. Hope you all have a good July, and we'll see you in August.